Hey gang, Professor McElroy here. It's week 3, learning module 3, designing with type 2022, February, GRA 3102, 6:30 p.m. So we'll get started here. Thank you for logging in. If you're synchronously logging in and watching live online tonight, or if you're watching it later asynchronously, thank you for that as well. Make sure that you are watching the recordings because I cover a lot of topics. I go over a few kind of expectations and things I'm looking for. And so it's important that you're watching the recording. I try to keep the lecture itself, the interactive portion, to an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. Then I can end the recording for those online. And the remainder of the class time becomes kind of an open lab situation where you get to work on your projects. We've got 9 students in this session, and everyone's doing a pretty good job kind of staying with the pace, doing the projects. It looks like most of you, if not all of you, are enjoying the process of learning about type anatomy, a little bit about the history of type, starting to dissect visual communication and the written word, and really just explore the letter form as a positive and negative space and how it kind of interacts with the visual audience based on scale, proportion, positive and negative space, and understanding the shoulders and the counters and the bowls and the stems and the crossbars and this idea of a cap height and an X height, and things have a baseline, and that kerning and leading is important in legibility and readability. So all of those aspects we've covered so far in the first few weeks of the class. So very good job with each of the mini projects. Everyone's pretty much on pace, so that's a really good thing. Gives us a chance to really explore the aspects of typography and the written word. So we're into learning module 3. There's only 2 mini projects this week, not the traditional 3 that we've had the first couple of weeks. That gives the students an opportunity to finish up anything that might be outstanding in week 1 or 2. And it also gives them a chance to explore the second project of the 2 mini projects in the class this week, using FontStruct to create an alphabet, which can be time consuming. And we're going to break down kind of the process for that tonight. I'm going to do a little bit about the type poster, a little bit of the mini project tonight, maybe 30 minutes or so, just to go over some of the aspects, some of the things that you should be exploring in the project. And then we'll spend the remainder of the time in FontStruct, and we'll be starting to develop a typeset for us to use, knowing that when you export that typeset out of the cloud-based, web-based tool, FontStruct, you can put it in your text folder, your text utility, your font folder, or whatever your computer calls it, and it will type out in Word or any of your text programs, just as if it was Helvetica or Arial or any other typeface that is in your font folder. So it's kind of a really cool thing. It can be time consuming at times because you got to know baselines and cap heights and X heights, and you got to take a look strokes, and it builds it in a grid pattern using what they call blocks in order to construct the letter. So it can be time consuming. Some students, you know, they really get into it and they spend 10, 15, 20 hours building a typeface. It's fun. So we'll see how you enjoy it now that you know a little bit about type anatomy, you know a little bit about the letter form, and you kind of know enough of font structure in order to kind of create your own thing. So that's kind of cool. So it'll be a fun kind of mini project this week. And that'll give us the opportunity where we could just literally type out sentences and words using the typeface that you created. So it's kind of pretty cool that it's free and you can do it, and you can see kind of what happens if you were a type designer. So let's get into the modules because we're into learning module 3. And like I said, the very first project in learning module 3, don't forget about the presentation that I have embedded in here. And don't forget about the discussion board that I have embedded in here. Oftentimes students end up posting in the discussion or the topic share some font lesson they learned as they were exploring, you know, type design and or FontStruct itself. It's kind of an interesting topic. So we only have 2 mini projects this week. The first one is the event poster. And by event poster, I mean, we're going to be creating a poster about this class. So you're going to see designing with type. Here is our title. Here is our location. I always do the previous location, but you can do whatever session number you want. We're actually going to play around with months instead of sessions. And I'm going to tinker around with the year too. I let students do any years, any sessions they want. Sometimes I get ones where they jokingly say like 1986 or 1835. So we're creating a poster design, type only. It has to have the name of the class, my name, your name, and the university in some timestamp. So not a lot of elements, but an opportunity to really play with typography. So I'm going to spend a little time in the beginning of the lecture here building a poster. And we're just going to do it on standard. You can do it on 8.5 by 11. If you want to go a little bit larger format, you can go 11 by 17. Remember, you can use any font application you want to, any type application you want to, whether it be Word or any web-based tool or any app you downloaded. Remember, I'm just going to use Illustrator because it's what I use for a profession every single day. So I'm just going to use that as my text tool, but you can use whatever you want. So let's get into Illustrator, and we're just going to cover some of the basic aspects of the first mini project in your 2 mini project class. So we'll just go standard letter size piece of paper, and I'm just going to make it a portrait, just like you would do in Word or any other program. Here it is. I'm going to tuck my palettes out of the way here in Illustrator so they're not in the way. I was doing digital illustration class the other night and we were drawing. And so I just got to move some of these things to make our palette a little bit cleaner. Okay, so the very first thing we have to tackle, remember, this is a visual hierarchy thing. So we want to start with the name of the class first, right? Designing with type. So I'm just going to do all caps. So I'm going to do designing. And so I'm just going to make this larger, hold down shift, just so that's big over here. And I'm going to do all caps just because I want the title of the class to kind of be yelling at you, because it is the most important aspect. So we're going to do designing with, and I'm going to do all caps and do type. And I'm going to make this big too. And so I'm just going to start playing around, right? I have white space. So the first thing I could do if I wanted to was just break the space up into white and black, right? So here's white and black. And something I always tell the students as I'm kind of playing around is that, remember, and I probably highlighted it in another class, that you don't want to split anything down the middle. You've probably heard of it before when we talk about any of the design classes, if you've had any with me before. You never want 50-50. They call it the 1/3 principle, or 2/3, 1/3. So I'm actually going to make the black area of the background bigger than the white area. So at least 2/3 and 1/3. And remember from our designing process, and I'm actually going to rotate this. Remember from the designing process that we talked about, is that positive and negative space makes a really interesting kind of process, right? So I'm just rotating this on its side. I'm just kind of showing you some of the thought processes I'm going through as I'm trying to divide this space up. And I'm going to bring this to the front so you can see. So look what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to play with positive and negative space so that I create some visual interest. And this is an opportunity for you as a creator just to start playing around. So watch as I kind of move it and I let the P touch where the white and the black background intersect. And it gives me kind of this like negative space where my eye can wander through. Watch if I move it off the page a little bit. I'm actually going to move it off the page so you can see kind of what's going on. Now in Word, if you did that, or some programs, and I'm going to outline this just so that I can clip it. If you're using Word, you wouldn't see what ran off of the artboard. You would only see this. So I'm going to actually do it in Illustrator so you get an idea for what it looks like in Word. Like if you ran it off the page, you wouldn't see anything off the page in your document. So it would look like this. Now look at what happens when the E gets cut off the page and you have kind of this baseline defined off the page. Well, now it looks like TYPF. which doesn't really work for us. So I'm going to double click and go into my clipping mask, and I'm just going to move this over a little bit. So now you'll notice you can see the E, right? You can see the E. Now look what happens if I move it this way. So I'm just adjusting this so you can see the effect that happens. Look if that P runs into that negative space differently. Does that still read as a P? It gives us this little, part of the shoulder, the curve of the letter, and it puts it into the negative space so it disappears. I think it still says type on it, which makes it very interesting, because if I write a word and sit it right here now, it's going to visually connect the P. So watch what happens when I bring it over here and I drop it in, and I'm going to bring this to the front, just like you would do in Word if you're playing around with letters. Now look how the P curves into designing. So designing starts to connect with type. I'm actually going to move this down a little bit so you can see at least the crossbar here of the E. So you can definitely tell that's an E. And it still has the curve of the P. And I'm just playing around so that you can see kind of what visually I'm trying to do and what you should be learning in week 3 of the class. That kerning matters, that leading matters, that spacing matters, scale matters, that positive and negative space and how they interact matter. They all dictate how you process information. Now, I'll even take it one step further, that I try to design on a grid, which means that where this P curves into the negative space, I try to make the N looks like it's curving into it. So you see how I move that N ever so slightly, and the P is now curving in to the end. That's kind of like a hidden ligature, like these things are kind of connecting because the negative space meets the positive space. And by doing that, it gives a common relationship. It binds it together because the shapes are connecting from your eye standpoint. So I'm going to leave designing there, and I'm going to leave type how it is, just so you can kind of see my process. But I think I'm going to go in and I'm going to see what happens if I make this bold. So I'm going to make this bold. So now look, the bold designing is really competing with the black background. So now I need to move my type back over so it's curving into the end. So you can actually see this when I mouse over it, how that thing is curving into the end. So I'm going to move it over, and that thing's curving and it's meeting the N, and it's starting to kind of create this relationship. Now, if I make it closer, right, leading wise, if I make it closer to the P, it has a much greater relationship than if I move it way up here and put it in the center of the negative space. There's no close relationship here. It's right 50-50 in the middle. If I move it up 2/3, 1/3, watch what happens if it touches, right? It starts to interact with the E. Designing is connected to the word type, but now you have designing E, TYP, just by the visual relationship. But if I was trying to line them up this time to the E, I would move the N over so that the N lines up with the vertical line of the E. So now I have designing E, TYP. If I move it down closer to the P, 2/3, 1/3, now it looks like designing type, because it has a greater relationship to the overall word than it does the individual letter. So I'm just going to kind of find a nice happy spot that's somewhere in the 1/3, 2/3 scenario, right? 2/3 here, 1/3 there, and I have the word designing and type done. And this is just playing around, right? Rotate letters, make them white, make them black, make them interact, change the size of them. Watch what happens if I do this. I make it all caps, but I make the I lowercase. So now you can see this one of two ways. You can see this as I am designing, and when I move within and type, I made this look like a figure inside of the word designing, one individual figure. It could also read as I designing if someone was looking at this, which isn't proper English, but you could get that. What if I made both of these? Now you have two figures inside of the word designing. So now you get into legibility and readability. Do people still read this as designing, or do they read it as DISGNNG with two little figures in between it? You'll notice in television shows, movies, they spend a lot of time creating kind of interesting plays of what symbols and letters look like when you replace one for another, or you change it in some way, and the interaction that happens there. They do a lot of time, they spend a lot of time on that relationship. So I'm going to keep the one like that, but watch what happens now. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make this letter bigger. So let's go up to like 200. And I'm going to move the N back over so that it looks like it's interacting with, right? I mouse it over so you can see where the curve is touching the N. So now look how this reads, designing type. So now I've decided the D, so D type, because they're both big now, D type or DE type, and how I'm playing with scale and proportion, keeping the same baseline in order to create kind of an interesting layout. Is there limitless solutions? There are limitless solutions. Watch what happens if I delete the D from the word designing. And this is an exploration I do when I'm creating type solutions for a client. These are the exact same things I do. Watch if I make the D its own thing. So now look, the D is touching the negative space. So now it's tied. So it's DTYP to the negative space. The word, the rest of designing written out, the uppercase everywhere except for the lowercase I that looks like I designing type. The curve of the P interacting with the N to make designing and type feel like it's the same, right? It's all together. I'm playing around with the visual aspect of letters based on shapes and how they interact with positive and negative space by just one font family and adjusting scale and proportion, rotation, that sort of thing. Now, it's really interesting because watch what happens if I rotate this thing just sideways a little bit. And for the sake of the process, I'm going to make it white just so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to bring it to the front. And I'm going to move it right up here. Now, remember, we read in a reverse S, top left to bottom right. So you can see the snaking action that we read in. So look at this, designing with type. I've rotated this type, the word with, still all uppercase. By rotation, it generates energy. By rotating it up, it's pointing to the word designing. So watch the difference when I rotate it up versus when I rotate it down. So now designing with is falling towards the word type. So now I'm generating that reverse S. I'm rotating to give some energy, but I'm allowing the letters to interact. So now watch what happens, because I want it to be designing with type. Watch when I just move this over, right? Designing with type, and the W is touching the negative space that designing is sitting on, and it's touching the P that makes up this grand vertical shape. Now it's really easy for someone to read it correctly in order. Designing with type. Now, I'm a stickler for logo design where they have more than one word in the logo and they stack the words so that they read incorrectly. So if I did designing and I had the word with and I was doing it in a logo, so I'm just going to do it real quick so that you can see what I'm talking about. If I have designing and with, and I do this with the word with, and you see it all the time in logo design. That's with designing. That's not designing with. They put it in the front, they rotated on its side, and they made it the main aspect left and right to a logo design. This is not designing with, it's with designing. I'm a huge stickler of that. What happens if I do this when I'm using typography and I'm playing with space? Does that read designing with? No. Normally you'll see a logo that says the market and the will be smaller and it'll be on top of market. So it reads the market. This reads with designing to. It reads designing with when you move it to the bottom of the stack of words. So you'll see it all the time in logo design. So just be aware when you're playing with letters and numbers and symbols, now that we understand visual hierarchy, positive and negative space, foreground and background, we understand scale and proportion, we understand kerning and leading, and we understand the reverse S. We're trying to create something that is a poster for the class where the name is really important, the university is important. I would argue that I'm less important than those two things, and the date is less important, right? Because it can run anytime. So we have to create something visually that's appealing and interesting and different, and we need to create something that reads in order. Class first, university second, professor maybe third, and time of the class, I would argue, is fourth in the process. So we want to make sure the name is first. So scale and proportion, remember that. Then we need probably Hodges University second. So let's do that. And we're allowed to use color now. So I'm going to play around a little bit with color, right? I'm actually going to do HU instead of Hodges. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to rotate it this way. And I'm going to drop it in here somewhere. And I'm going to use, just because I like to stay in gray tones and things like, let's just use gray tones. So let's keep it dark. And I'm actually going to outline it so I can do the same thing that I did with the word type. So you can see kind of what it looks like in the document when you take it off the page. So I'm going to do this. I'll hold down Shift. And I'm just going to clip that so you can see it. So designing with type. Now here's HU for Hodges University. Now by making it gray on black, it makes it go further into the background, more like a middle ground, because the white text on black is foreground, large, bold black text on the white, foreground. When you start to get into gray tones, it starts to go to middle ground. So watch what happens if I double click this. And just for the sake of the process, I'm going to darken it up even a little bit more. So now you can really see. It does say Hodges University, HU, and even though it's really large, equal inside to the TYP, when it's dark gray, it disappears. So designing with type is still most important. HU starts to drift into kind of the middle ground. So scale works, change in color works, positive and negative space works, and kind of how you treat the typeface. Bold, regular, italic. So I'm just creating visual separation so you can kind of see what I'm thinking as I'm laying out my poster, kind of the thought process of type design, type layout, what we want to do with it as we're creating our page. So I have two of the elements already covered. So all I need left is the date and professor, right? And I have all the pieces I need. I'm starting to think this should be even bigger. So I'm going to make the D even bigger. I made it bigger because I want to make sure that type and designing are the same visual scale. Designing with type, right? So it's going up. So HU still disappears off into the distance a little bit. So, all right, so we have designing with type. HU, which is Hodges University. Does it read as HU? Do I need to move the U up a little bit? Does this still read like a U? I think once you start to get that curve, it reads as a U. I don't think you need to see the bottom of the letter. I think that we can get away with that. Okay, so what I like to do sometimes, once I've determined foreground, I've created some kind of middle ground space, is the next thing I like to do is I like to do kind of background. So the date actually is background. So I'm going to do, it's February, so let's do 02. And let's do 22. And I don't know if you've ever seen people do the month and year with a period separating it, but any kind of separation has gotten kind of fun in typography. You could use a comma, you could use one of these, you could use a slash, You could use any number of things to separate 02 and 22, but you can't stack it, because if you do 02 22, people are going to think it's the year of 02 22, which would be a really long time ago. So you do have to kind of keep them on the same baseline. But just for the sake of commonality, sometimes I like to do that, where you use 2 colons and it makes a little box, little foreground box, and separates the letters. But you might get a little weird with that because it looks a little bit like a glyph. And I don't know if people will read it as February 2022. So let's stick with one of the more common ways of doing it. And we're just going to put a period between it. So let's shrink it down, because remember, scale does matter. So, I wonder if, so here's an interesting play. What if I do that? Does it read as 02 22? I actually think maybe it does. So this part of the crossbar of the E is separating February from 2022. So there's lots of ways you can do it visually as you're trying to problem solve the layout of the poster. And this is just exploration. That's why I let you use any program you want, anything that has a text tool, because I want you to explore the letter form. There isn't a right or wrong answer, but there is an effective way to communicate and an ineffective way to communicate. Sometimes it just doesn't read right if the scale's wrong, if the kerning's wrong, if the leading's wrong, if the positioning is wrong, if it's all uppercase or all lowercase, or you make too much of the background black and too much text white. Like, there is a wrong communication style, not as effective communication style, but you're creating with type. And if designing with type, the session, month, and year is in it, and the university name or abbreviations in it, and the professor's name is in it, you have successfully created the designing with type poster, but it doesn't mean it successfully communicates all the aspects of a poster. The poster is the most beautiful form of visual communication I believe you can have. It's a single-sided piece of paper that can be put on a website as a digital representation. It could be printed and put on a wall. It could be made into a building billboard graphic. It could be made as a sign you put on the side of the road. It is a single side that has 4 edges and has a foreground and negative space in that 2D one-sided thing. There's a million solutions, but there's really an effective way to communicate and an ineffective way to communicate. And sometimes it's misscaling, sometimes it's miscropping, sometimes it's misrotating, sometimes it's illegible or not readable because of kerning or leading. Just because the sky's the limit doesn't mean that it might have the most successful communication style. And you see it all the time, billboards that aren't effective. You see things like this that don't work, but the poster is the purest form of typography, of visual communication, of design. It's one of my favorite things ever to design for a client, whether it's a digital poster, whether it's a physical poster, whether it's a graphic in the proportions of a poster that they're going to use on a t-shirt or on a vehicle magnet or anything like that. I love two-dimensional, single-sided, 4 edges design solutions. And I like them even more when they're one color. In this case, black and white. This is a white piece of paper that black is being printed on. So where you see the negative space here that's white, that's just the piece of paper. Where you see the black, that is the ink printed. Where you see the white letters on the black, that means no ink. This is technically still paper. So just understand that if you're using a white piece of paper and you're designing in black and white, the only ink being printed is black. And actually, this is a shade of black, 60% or 70% or 80%, whatever I set it at. It is a single color solution. Okay, so that brings us to, we have the date, we have the class, we have the university. The last thing I have to do is my instructor's name. So I want this to be a little less important because I don't feel like that's important. So I'm going to do Prof. McElroy. So Professor McElroy. So let's do this, right? I'm going to make it feel personal. So I'm going to make it italic. Remember, italics like a personal conversation. So I'm going to take this and let's scale it down. So how big do we need it to be to kind of be middle ground-ish? So let's go about 48 point, right? Let's go about 48 points. So now we have a challenge, right? Because if I move it up there, it immediately becomes really important because we're reading in a reverse S, right? This is really important now because I moved it up to the top. Well, even if I make it really small, so let's make it like, I don't know, 24 point and move it up to the top. Look at this. Even though it's really small and it's white with black, because it's reverse S, my eye wants to read this really early on. Even though I'm trying to focus in the middle of the page, I'm trying to read reverse S, I'm trying to read by visual hierarchy. Because I put it in the upper left-hand corner, my eye immediately wants to go to Professor McElroy or Prof. McElroy because I put it in the upper left-hand corner. Even though your eye is trying to gravitate to the middle of the page, it goes up here just by the nature of the beast because it's in the upper left-hand corner. So I need to move it down here. I do need to make it white, I think, because if I make it gray, it's going to go background, like really distant background. What if I move it over here? I'm just going to use the stem of the T and kind of drop it in the corner there. And you're going to notice that designing with type reads really importantly. Equally importantly, because of the way the negative spaces in the E, the February 22nd reads pretty importantly. The HU, because it's grayscale, disappears in the distance. And by the nature of my name being really, really small down here, it reads kind of less important. Even though it's white letter on black background, my eye is attracted to the center of the page. It's reading in reverse S. And the last thing it's probably going to remember is the professor. Well, that's good for me. As long as you see the name first, you know kind of when the thing was taking place. You kind of know who is saying it or teaching it. And then you have the university footprint. I think success has been made. Now, I like to design on a grid. So for me, visual space is really important. So I'm going to try to center my name so that the space here and the space here is equal, right? So I'm going to try to center that so that the space is equal, because visually, I want your eye to read designing with type February 22nd, and you're kind of processing down the page, HU and Professor McElroy. Just because you stack designing with type first, Hodges University second on the page, the date third, and my name fourth, and you just center align it right down the middle of the page, doesn't mean you'll read it in that order. So just be aware of that. Scale and proportion, the font style, the placement, the positive and negative space, all dictate the solution. I feel okay about that. This designing with type is just kind of a messing around lecture, talking through the process, I think is a good positive solution. I love to play around with spacing. So I actually probably would do something along this line. So I'm just going to move this over so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I love to play around with letters. And so I might even do something like that where it says Prof or Professor and McElroy there. Now, if I did that, I probably would write out the word professor. So that the crossbar of the T that's separating the two words, because it would read independently, Professor, and then McElroy. So it could really read as Professor and then McElroy. So I wouldn't do an abbreviation, because if it just said Prof, someone might not know what that is. So Professor McElroy, and I would try to space this out equally. so that it reads as one word or one phrase. And then I might try to center it vertically from that X height and this baseline, so it's centered in the middle of the page. So you can kind of see how I'm playing around with leading, kerning, spacing, word spacing, how I'm playing with size, scale and proportion and location based on the reverse S and all the things that are happening. And the last part of the project, I said it would be interesting if we did something, is if we played around with some kind of aspect of the class. So I thought it would be fun. Just maybe we'll just do this. I'm going to take this and I'm going to outline it just so that you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to move it here and I'm going to copy a couple of them. Rotate this one a little bit. Scale it up just a skosh. I don't know if they look like birds, but I thought it would be funny to use one of the brackets or something and try to create like a little bird or something in the design. If I was doing that, I like to do odd numbers, because odd numbers makes your eye, remember 2/3, 1/3? Odd numbers makes your eye kind of decide like, where do I want to go in the design? So I'm going to do this, make it gray. So now you see background, middle ground, foreground by scale, but by making this gray, it goes into the background, even though it's larger than these two. So I try to do things in like odd numbers, 3, 5. That way your eye is like competing with these two, but also trying to figure out this one because it's larger, and kind of makes your eye bounce back and forth between shapes. So I'm going to leave my design like that. I kind of explored the aspects for the class. I started trying to show that I understand leading and kerning, visual hierarchy, top to bottom, kind of the idea of alignment, baselines and cap heights, what happens if you play around with X height, cap height, and all of the aspects that we kind of learned about the first 2 weeks. But I also covered all of the information I needed designing with type, February 2022, Hodges University, Professor McElroy. And so I think that for me, I got all the elements in there. I played around a little bit. I've tried to show the things that I understand. I've kind of learned as we've covered the first couple of weeks. I could always do something like, you know, maybe I take this and I highlight an aspect of type anatomy and label some aspect of my design so that people know like what it is. So I don't know, let's do this. What if I did that and I made it black, just so you can see it's labeled, but it's off in the distance. So I'm just labeling some aspects of the design to show my understanding of type anatomy, typography. If someone saw this, they would be like, oh, so you learn a little bit about type anatomy, this, you know, crossbar or vortex or any of those aspects, or maybe I make a character out of it like this thing, just to kind of start to tie in some of the aspects of what we learned, combined with the class, combined with typography, and kind of explore some solutions. So that's my 30-minute kind of, this is the aspects of the event poster, the class poster that we're looking for as mini project 1, as we're kind of pushing our envelope understanding of typography, what it is, what the aspects of it are, what visual communication is, and kind of start to hopefully visually communicate a successful message. This would be a really cool sign for a front door if you were putting a sign on the front door, because people would actually stop and read it, because it's got all this dynamics, change of size, kerning, leading, text on an angle, positive and negative space. It's got all this stuff going on. So someone stop and pause and be like, let me look at this a little bit further and see what it says, versus just designing with type right across the middle of the page. So now hopefully you're starting to see the aspects of design, why it's important, and kind of how you can visually control the eye based on what you're writing. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm just going to name it Designing with Type _poster. I'm just going to dump it out on the desktop. So I have my solution designed. And that gives us a little 30-minute demonstration. Follow along if you wanted to. Just listen to me so I can kind of give you the professional application of why this thing is important and start to kind of reinforce. You need to be applying elements we're learning the first couple of weeks of class so I can see your interpretation of typography, designing with type, and how the letters, numbers, and symbols are important visually. And you could do it all in black and white. You don't need to have color, but you have the option to add color, because we did add a little color last week with our Poe book cover design that we were creating. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that, because that's about, I wanted to do about a 30-minute demonstration of the event poster, the class poster, just so that you can be churning the same wheels that I'm churning as we're continuing to push our understanding of typography. I firmly believe this is one of the key aspects of visual communication, that you can take all kinds of classes: web design, you could take advertising design, you could take packaging, you could do multimedia design or animation. We're animating text and objects and doing all this kinetic stuff. If you don't understand typography, right? We live in the written world. If you don't understand typography, visual communication, why letters, numbers, and symbols are important as part of a messaging campaign, then I think you fall short. So I'm thankful that students, A, have access to a typography class, B, we cover it in a way that lets you explore applications as you please, whatever you're comfortable in, and C, it shows you good and bad, effective and ineffective communication based on your font choice, your scale and proportion, your positive and negative space, and how you position letters, numbers, and symbols on a page. So hopefully you take this, and then as you evolve into other design applications, whether it's your major or not, because we have lots of students to take the class, maybe someday you're gonna have to do a PowerPoint, and this is the prime class to teach you why you use certain colors in PowerPoints, why you have certain backgrounds in PowerPoint, why headlines are important, why block quotes are important, why things are scaled, why are block quotes italic? Well, it's somebody's testimonial on the PowerPoint presentation. It can be a little bit smaller, even if you put it in quotes or don't put it in quotes, that you start to understand the importance of the font family and how the written word is communicated based on how the audience absorbs the message. So there's my pitch into our event poster. Now, the second project is the time-consuming one in this learning module. Creating your own typeface can be as quick as an hour or two if you're picking things and kind of putting them together quickly, or could be multiple hours. And I've had students, and I put a couple of samples in our announcement section. I've had students take hours and hours and hours all weekend long because they really got into the project and they wanted to create something that they could actually use future down the road when they're creating any kind of type communication, you know, a cover to a research project they're doing, or maybe they have to make an announcement for a birthday party or something like that, and they want to use their own font so they can tell their family and friends, you see this poster, it was created using my own font. I mean, it's keeping in mind that this is a profession in its own. Being a type designer is a job. I mean, people do this for a living. So it can be as little as a few hours or as much as many, many hours. But I introduced this site because I think it's really interesting for students to play around with and explore. And yes, there are a million YouTube videos on this program itself, fontstruct.com. There are hundreds of YouTube videos of people, A, creating their own font, recording it and posting it in YouTube, to every how-to, every analysis, every breakdown, everything about how this tool is used and what you can use it for. So if you want a little background, my goodness, you can go to YouTube and type in FontStruct, and it's years worth of videos about this particular free cloud-based font design tool. I love the thing. I think it's really interesting now that we're learning about letters, number, and symbols to try to create your own. It's a really fun, could be time-consuming project. That's why I try to like to keep the lecture to an hour, hour and a half tops tonight, so that you can have fun playing in this cloud-based application. It is absolutely free to sign up. I tell students, use your Hodges email address, pick a password, one that you're going to remember, and log in. The beauty about FontStruct is that it is cloud-based. So if you're in the classroom, at home, on your phone, on your tablet, if you have Wi-Fi connectivity, you can design a font, a typeface, a typeset. You can download it and put it onto any of your computers and use it as if it was your own, as if some super fancy font designer creator created this thing. It's a simple design tool, but it can be really complex in its simplicity. So I want to spend a little time tonight showing you how to build a font using FontStruct, or design a typeface using FontStruct. We have to do all the upper and lowercase letters because we have to be able to type out something, a message, using the typeface that we created. We don't have to go into numbers. We don't have to go into symbols or anything like that. But we do need all the upper and lowercase. And keep in mind, when you download your created thing and you put it into your font folder on your PC, or your text folder or type folder on your Mac, it becomes something just like Times New Roman, Helvetica, Garamond, any of the classics. So be creative with your name, have fun with it, and let's see what you can create. Now, I've already logged in, and when I log in, my home page looks like this. Remember, it's free. Look at some of these typefaces. I mean, look at this thing. Somebody created this. This is the funkiest, coolest thing they've done. I mean, punctuation and everything. Look at all these things of a typeface using FontStruct. I mean, look at this little fat letters here, all the uppercase, the numbers. This is an all caps typeface, so they did uppercase and numbers only, and you can actually download it and put it onto your computer, and you could use something that someone created. They also have a pay area inside of this website where you can create a typeface, upload it, and charge people to download it, which is a scary thought. But if you're really good at it, you can make revenue off of people downloading the rights to your typeface in order to use it for their design project. So really cool, possible revenue generator, possible creative avenue. It's kind of like being a calligrapher, but we're just being a calligrapher on the computer. So once we, sorry, I had to drink a little bit of coffee there. So once we log in, remember it's free, set up a username and password. You're going to see under My FontStruct, which is the very first top tab there, you're going to see New FontStruction. So I'm going to click on it because it's going to ask me to name my design, because I'm going to create a typeface here. Yay! I'm going to create a typeface here. So let's see here. I always use my kids kind of acronyms and fun things. My youngest is 13. We named him Sullivan because my wife's mom is the last Sullivan. So we kind of used her maiden name and made it his first name. And as a kid, I always called him Sully Man or Sully Monster. And I don't know, Disney had a Sully Monster in one of their movies. So it's kind of funny. We named him Sully Man or Sully Monster before there was a Sully Monster, but now there is a Sully Monster and he has a huge one in his room. So I'm going to just go on and call it Sully Man, just as kind of a fun name. I better make it, let's make it an uppercase S, just so that it seems to be grammatically correct. Okay, so now take a look at this thing, just so that you can get a lay of the land, right? You can get a lay of the land. So I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to zoom out so you can see what I have going on here. This is a grid pattern right here, a grid pattern. And they have what are called bricks over on the left-hand side. So just imagine each one of these boxes holds a brick. And the brick is what we use to construct our letter form. So remember pixels in Photoshop? In essence, these are pixels that make up our letters. And look at all of the different shapes of bricks, right? All the different shapes of bricks, and each brick connects something. I'm going to go into the menu and I'm going to turn on guides. I'm going to turn on guides because they're going to help me kind of make the width and the height of my letters. So you see this? I turn these guides on just so that I have guides, because remember letters were carved on blocks, and blocks have a width and a height, right? Slugs, they used to be wood, metal, printed, laid in a tray, and ran paper through them, ink, kind of like stamp. So we need to keep that in mind as we're constructing. I need a certain width and a certain height for all of my cap heights, and I need a certain width and height for all of my X heights. So that's just really important, because I need that in order to be consistent with my letters, so that when I construct them, build them, they are ones that are consistent when I'm typing them out in a baseline or a text line of some kind. I don't really want to stagger the heights of them, even though some font designers, you will see certain letters are taller than others, and you kind of get this roller coaster bouncing up and down. I don't really want that for this. So I got to start with uppercase A. So you see each one of these down the bottom is an uppercase letter. And if I click to B, I'm creating B. If I click to A, I'm creating A. So I need to start. So these are the bricks. Now, the really interesting thing, and I'm going to create kind of a bubbly curved letter, I think. So I'm going to take this brick and I'm just going to drop it down in this corner right here, because this is the beginning of my uppercase A. So I want to have a curve there. And then let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bricks. On the other corner, I'm going to drop my other curve, because I'm going to start making a letter that kind of curves at the bottom and maybe it curves at the top. So I have the beginning of this thing going. So that's curved left, curved right. So I'm trying to figure out, so I need to make this go up somehow. So let me just take a look at my different thickness options of my brick, because I got to make the bottom of the letters first. So I'm just checking things out here. I've got thicknesses here, little triangles and polygons and things like that. If I used one of these, so you see the shape of these, I could actually put it in there and it would make a triangle shape here, and it would make this kind of footer area, or this serif to my A. It would give it an angle. And you'll notice as I pick bricks, it adds them to my bricks. So then I know how to replicate them over and over again. So I'm going to look for, let me see what I got here. I'm going to see if I can take maybe this one, and I'm going to drop it in right there. So this is the beginning of the curve of my A. So let's do another straight there. Now I'm going to pick this one and drop it in there. Oh, wrong direction, right? I need it to be this one, because I need it to be the inside, right? I need it to be the inside of that thing. So now let's see here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this, drop it in there. I'm going to take this one, drop it in there. And I'm literally creating this thing on the fly. I did not have any preconceived idea of what I wanted to do with my uppercase A. Oh, I don't want that one. I need it to be this one. So you're going to see that I'm starting to draw an A. So this thing is what I'm creating here. So let's see here. I can actually take this one, I think, and see what I'm doing. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to go like 6 by 9. So I kind of know exactly what I have for height. 6 by 9 is something easy for me to remember. So I'm going to go with 6 by 9. And this is thin. See how this is a thin stroke down here? I think I want to do a thin up here. So I'm going to do a thin and a thin. All right, so I'm constructing my A here. So I have 6 wide by 9 tall, right? 6 wide by 9 tall. And I've got to continue this crossbar here. So I already know this is my brick. I'm going to draw this across. So now you can see, oh, I got to do this one over here. Oh, wrong one. I need this vertical one. Oh, wrong one. I need, let's see what we got here. I need this one, right? Let's see if I can get this thing. So let's pick that, pick this. All right, so there we go. So here is the beginning of my A, right? 6 wide by 9 tall. I got to create something in here to make the negative space of the A. So 6 by 9. I've got this thing kind of going here. I could do something as simple as just a circle in there. But there's also under the bricks a thing called connect. So you see how this is core? These are the core bricks. But I can actually go in and there's a second option called the connect bricks. And you're going to see that it has different bricks for connect than it has for core. And they kind of have these thicker things for like a serif kind of thing, or it has these double circles. And I think, let's see what I want to do. I think I want to do this. So I'm going to drop that into there, and this one into there, and this one into there, and this one into there. So here is my A. Oh my gosh, I did not mean this to happen, but it looks like the friend of Sully Monster in the Disney movie. I forget that guy's name with the one eye, but now all of a sudden it looks like the monster with one eye inside of Sully Man. The other character, I forget his name. He has the arms and legs and he has a single eye. But now I've seemed to have created something that mimics what I was talking about without actually doing what I was talking about. So here is my A, right? I've created it. I've got my guides going on here. So let's go over to B now, right? So I have A. So I have thin curves, thick strokes, and negatives. So now I got to go into B. So B is going to have a curve at the top, curve at the bottom. It's actually going to have these 4 curves, and that's going to have solid straight lines. Well, that's easy. So if I go into B now, I need to have curve, curve, and I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's just double check that. Yep, we're okay, right? Oh, this one's wrong. I need to have this one there, and I need this one there. Okay, so now, and you're just seeing the process I'm going through here. So let's go back to A. So there's A, and there's B. So A is fine because I have this to go across here for B, but then I need the thickness brick. So let me find that. I need the thickness brick that goes, I got to go back to core, and I've got to find the brick that runs along the bottom, which is this one. So I need that, 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 and then this over here. All right, so you're seeing me problem solve here. So the B is going to need to tuck in somewhere here. So there's 9, so I need 1, 2, 3. And then I need 1, 2, 3. So here's the problem. So now I got to figure out how this thing is going to tuck in. So do we have diagonals? I've got a diagonal here. I've got a diagonal here. What are my other brick options? What other kind of diagonals do I have? I have triangles, but if I introduce triangles, I only use curves and straights in A. So if I do triangles, I need to make sure that I do triangles for every indent in my uppercase letters. And so now we're starting to see the rationale, the kind of thought process behind everything's rounded in what I've done so far. So I just got to see what brick options I have that are rounded. These are interesting. What if I do that and that? I don't dislike that. That's the beginning of something there. So let's do my curves again. So I need this, and I need that, and that, and then I need it here, and here, and here, and here. So now you can see A and B. So you can start to see, now every time I pick a brick, it compiles it to my bricks. The thing you're trying to do is create your letters with a consistent brick pattern. In this case, it's 6 bricks across, 9 bricks tall for the uppercase. I'm going to guess my lowercase. I'm probably going to do 6 bricks across and probably maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 bricks, either 5 bricks or 6 bricks tall. So if I do 6 by 6, it's a square brick. If I do 6 by 5, it's a little bit wider than it is tall. Both create a design challenge, but something that we can kind of work with. So I'm going to go ahead and save this just to make sure that, so, and I can always go back and forth. So look, A and B. So now C, interesting. C, I need to, in essence, do this part and that part for C. So let's go to C. And the first thing I have to do is this. Oh, wrong one. This, right? And this. And then I have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that. And that, right? So I already kind of know my pattern. So it's going to get easier as I create my letters because I've already kind of dictated the pattern based on what I did with the other letters. And so here's the beginning of my C. So A, B, C. So now for the B, the downstroke does get thick. So I'm thinking for the C, I need to do this just so that it's the same. Now, do I want to do this? Does it still read as a C? Or do I want to leave a little more space open there? A, B, C. Interesting. Do I want to cross it across? A has a crossbar. B doesn't have to because it has its negative space. So then do I want to go across here? So what if I do this? And what if I do, let's see here. I'm just problem solving while I'm going along, right? I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do brick wise. So if it's that one, oh, and this one. So there is C. Do I want to make it bubbled? Because this one is bubbled and this one is bubbled. I kind of think I do need to make it bubbled.
Why don't you take like the half circle looking things, not the rainbow ones, but like the single line ones?
This?
Nope.
This?
Yeah, those. And connect it to the corners of those and like wrap it around.
Interesting.
It kind of makes it bubbly looking-ish.
So let's see.
You just make like a circle
I
thing.
do that.
And maybe like a short line in between.
Do I do that? And if I do that, then I have to do this, which then becomes a problem with that. So let's do this. Oh. Let's get that back. So it's web-based, so every once in a while it gets a little quirky. There we go. I need to delete this one, I think.
Maybe bring it up a block.
Yeah, I have to bring it up a block. I think you're exactly right.
Yeah, see, then put a thick one in between it.
Then I
maybe.
can put a thick one in between it. Oh,
Maybe the other side.
yep. Maybe the other side. Well,
I wish you was connected it with, is there a thin line, like a thin straight line that you could put in the middle?
so yeah, that is the trick with the bricks. I have circles. I have,
What if you use the
oh,
rainbow
I
looking
could,
one?
I could use that
Oh,
better. I don't love this line tool. I'm gonna go with that for now. My brain's got to chew on it a little bit, but I've got A, I've got B, and now I have C.
well, if you want to use like the half rainbow thing, instead of using the thin lines, why don't you use the half rainbows, because all the other things have like the half rainbow looking things.
They
And then
do.
you can use a thick block, and I think it'll match it better.
I could maybe. So what if I did that, that, and that? And I did, so what do I need? I need this one, right?
Maybe put it next thing, I don't know.
It's tricky. It is tricky. It is a tricky process. So if I do that, nope.
You're gonna have to pop it up. a
Aye,
lot,
aye, aye. I do that.
And then you could put a thick block maybe.
I could.
Or the other
Uh,
side.
They're all interesting. I mean, there isn't really a wrong answer. It's just you want to be consistent. Does it read as a C? The A definitely reads, the B reads, the C is a little bit tricky, but you know what? I'm thinking now that I should have used this
Oh, that's a good idea.
because the other one used that to indent here.
That's better.
So we got that, we have this, we have this now. All right, I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. So I think I'm starting to get something going on here. All right, so now let's go. All right, so D is tricky. Like the A I curved here, so I have to curve the D too. So I do know that I have to start with that. And I probably have to do that. And I probably have to do that. And I probably have to do that in order to stay consistent with my A, my B, my C. So now we have D. So D is interesting because if I do this, oh, it's web-based, so it gets a little quirky at times. You just got to be patient with it because it really is a very interesting tool for designing your own font. So let's see here. So how do I make this look like a D? If I put a
Like an O.
if I put a hole in the middle,
Feel like an O. Why don't you put the thick lines a little in and then like curve around? Like in the, you know, the little brick lines?
what if I do this?
Oh,
This is cheating because I didn't curve the other one. So I kind of feel like I'm cheating now. Let me scroll down. Let me go back to my core because I think that's where I have the little. Yeah. I feel like that's cheating
well, but you
because
didn't curve the other
I
side.
didn't curve. I didn't flatten those. So now it makes me feel like I should have done this. And then I would get away with it because all the other ones have the left corner flat. That's the beauty about this. You can scroll back and forth a million times. Okay, so now if I offset the circle, it won't look like an O because it's not centered. At least that's my rationale. Does that look like a D?
No, it looks like a blob alien with an eyeball.
Yeah, so does B or A.
I
So
think
there's
that one looks
A,
more like a B though.
B.
The D piece is too
This looks
small.
like a
Can you
B.
make a bigger circle in the middle?
So a bigger circle in the middle. I could. So let's problem solve this for a minute. So if I did that, that, and that, and let's take a look at the connect ones and see if I have any. I do have straight lines, but how many straight? Oh, here's 3.
Oh, that could work.
So let's see here. So, and then if I do this here, this here, that there. Oh. Now does it look like a D?
It looks like it's like too off center though. I don't know.
Well, it has to be because
Yeah.
it's the number of bricks I picked. So it has to be off centered because I did an odd number.
Oh,
And I did that
okay.
on purpose because I didn't want it square. I want it 6 by 9. So all of them will be off centered if I do any space whatsoever in here, which now argues the question, should I, oh, it's auto saving for me. Should I move that over? So it's a bigger negative space. It's an endless battle when you start
Oh, that could work.
tweaking the thing. An absolute endless battle. So now I need, right? Do I need this? All right, so that's offset. That's not offset. Ay, ay, ay. So where is it offset? It's offset to the right or to the left?
That
one's-
was the left with the D to the right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So now I have to offset them the same direction of offset. So, all right, so if C, so D is leaned to the right, so B has to be leaned to the right. So I have to do that. And this, and that, and this. And then I need that, that, that. Oh my gosh, look how big the circle is there if I do that. This, and this, and this. And now you can see how if you really get into this, how, all right, so.
That looks better.
So B, so A is centered, so I have to move that offset. B is offset and D is offset. So now I think I have to do the curved lines somewhere in here, I have a feeling, in order to make this thing feel like the other ones. So now if I do that, oh, wrong one. If I do that and that, and I do this and this. All right, so the A is offset, the B is offset. Wow, the A and the B, how did the happy little accident happen where the top bowl is the same in A and B? That truly was a happy accident because I was just trying to grid this thing out. C and D, so B and D. Ideally, oh yeah, this space should be the same space. Ay, ay, ay. So now I have to do that and that and this and that and that and erase that so that the B and the D take up the same distance. Ay, ay, ay. All right, so we have A, B, C, and D. Now I'm not loving C because, oish, it's got the same indent as B, but it doesn't have any triple lines. So where can I do triple lines in this thing? Ay, ay, ay.
Can you take the
Gosh.
corner off the? Why don't you take like the corner where the brick is that connects to the start of the C area? Nope. Nope.
This.
Where they like that open space.
This here?
Yeah, there. Take no, like up. That brick right there. Get rid of that and make it like a rainbow bubble edge, or make it a bubble
Okay,
edge.
okay,
and make
maybe.
it, I don't know.
Maybe.
Do that for all the edges.
Ay, ay, ay. My type A personality is going to make me crazy over this. Because then if I make that, and that, and that, and that, oy, ay, ay. I'm trying to be consistent with my letters. And so now if I do that or that, nope. Ugh, I could do this a million times to try to figure out the best combination here. Ay, ay, ay. And keeping in mind, I have these down here, which would also work because they're triple lined. Oy. So if I did that, I know what's going to happen here. It's going to look right, but then I didn't use the bricks in the other ones. So I see what I can do to make it look right, but I didn't do that on the B. Ay, ay, ay.
I mean, they kind of look like they could be in the same font area.
They're close enough, I guess. If not, I'll be here till 10:30 tonight
I don't think I
tweaking the
can stay
D.
that long.
So I'm going to keep going here because I wanted to do enough of the letters so you can kind of see the process that my brain is going through. All right, so let's go to lowercase, right? So I can go over here to lowercase. So I have to problem solve this. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bricks. And I think I want to make it 5 bricks tall, but I also need to make this thing look like a lowercase. So I can either make this the same layout and make it only 5 bricks tall, or I need to introduce a design for the lowercase. And it needs to be bubbled because these are bubbled. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, all right, so let's problem solve this one thing at a time. So I got to go to the lowercase. And so I need it to curve. I need it to curve. So let's figure out our process here. I need it to curve, and once I introduce the lowercase, I'm kind of tied to the lowercase. So let's see here. It needs to be curved. It needs to be curved. Ay, ay, ay. So it's got to be curved there. And it has to be a bubble letter. And it can only be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 letters tall. But I'm starting to think here that it needs to be 6 letters tall in order to be able to truly make the thing bubble-ish. So let's do that. And how big do I have to make this thing? Let's do that. No, one more stroke, I think, to there. Oh. Keeps wanting to do that. I don't want it to do that. I want it to do the other one. Wake up. So let's go. Let's pick this one and go to a different block. All right.
Do you think it's like some sort of lag?
Part of it's a lag. It is cloud-based, so it's web-based, so it kind of has a little hiccup going on because it has to drag with the web. So here's the million-dollar question. Once I determine the A, I have to stick with the pattern of the A. Oh, so if I do that, I have to do that all the time. If I do this, oh, the process can be very tedious on the brain. It curves down here on all the other ones. Come on, make the curve. And I also have thick curves. So do I want to make thick curves with the lowercase? Because they're thin curves with the uppercase? That might not be a bad thing. Might not be a bad thing. So if I make them curve, so I know it has to go a certain height. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I definitely think I have to go 6 tall. I have to go 6 tall because it's got to give me enough room to make the lowercase. And do I want the lowercase to only go partially the way? Maybe to there. And then I have to cross it across again. Oh, wrong one. Come on. The problem of the process is, how do I make this thing look like how I want it to look? So if I do that, I do this. And then I need to get this to go down and go back across. So, so if I do that.
I would have made one of the A's where it's like the little tiny notch before it goes into the.
It's tricky,
round.
yeah.
Because the way you're doing
So
it might confuse people. to
it's
like a
tricky
Z
because
or
if I
something.
do this. Then it's thin. So then I need. It is a problem-solving process. So then, then if I do, I might be able to cheat this thing and have enough room. Oh, I might have something here. Now I need to do my circle. So which way did I offset it? I offsetted it to the right.
To the right.
So let's make it to the left with the lowercase. So I'm going to do that and that and that. And that. And then where's my straight lines? I have an A that makes sense. Lowercase a, uppercase A. Gosh, I wish that was longer now. Ooh, it's an endless battle if I do that. And I do that. And I do that. Now the uppercase matches the lowercase. But then, that should be longer. And that should be longer. Well, I'm in it to win it, so I got to do that. And that. And this and this. And that. Oh, wrong one. And that. Oh, come on. Wake up.
Why does it want to use that one line?
It loves that line for some reason. That. All right. So now A, B, D. Oh, I have to do that. And that. And that. And that. And that. And this. And this. And I can erase that, that, and that. And then I have the A the same width as the B. the same width as the D, the same width as the lowercase a. All right. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 by 6. All right. So
How are you gonna make the lowercase d?
lowercase d is going to be a bubble with 2 bricks of straight. And B is going to be a bubble with 2 bricks of
Yeah, because I was thinking, I'm
straight.
like, how are you not gonna be able to make it tall enough if you want to make
Yeah,
like
I'm gonna have just a little stem to make it tall enough. I mean, that's the nature of the beast, I guess. Oh, man. All right, so let's do this to make my life a lot easier. I'm gonna select that and copy it. And then I'm gonna go to lowercase b and paste it. So now I have to figure out, well, that's my D
Mhm.
almost. So let's go to D and paste it. And then I just need the stem here. So what kind of stem do I want to do? I could do this and this and that. Oh, that and that. Ooh. So now we have to go back to B.
E can be the same thing, but flip
This,
around.
oh, sugar. I need this. Wake up. And that. And that. And that. And that. And then I got to do something with this. I've got to do that, I guess. And
Why
then
don't you make the part? Yeah, that one.
I need that. Oh, life is coming together here. A, B, although that should be curved probably. I'm not sure. I skipped C because C is scary. So I have D, A. All right, A, B, and D. All right, so let me save this. I got to take an exhale because I have A, B, C, and D, and I have A, B, and D. So I have to get C in here. So I'd at least have 4 uppercase and 4 lowercase letters. Now, if you chose all thin bricks or all thick bricks, life would have been a lot easier. I chose thick and thin, and I chose straight and curved. And I chose the insides of my letters to be 3 lines of straight and curved. So of course, if I just made a thick letter with diagonals and thickness, or if I made them thin or just a curve, I didn't make them bubbled. I really added to the heartache of the process by A, making them bubbled, B, making them thick and thin, and C, making all of my interior counters and bowls into 3 line solutions, which has really added to my heartache. Now, keep in mind, I could save this, close out, come back 2 hours later, reconvene, and the letters the way they are, I would have created what I've created, and I can just go from there. We need all of our uppercase and all of our lowercase in order to create our alphabet. So we would be able to type out our font name on a piece of paper. I could type Sullyman out if I had upper and lowercase letters, so I could actually type the name of the font with my font. Keeping in mind that this little download button, and I'm just going to click it so you can see what happens. You click the download button, it gives you a little zip drive file. And if I double click on the zip file, you're going to notice there is a folder. And in the folder is a true typeface, TTF. This TTF file, if you put it inside of your font folder on your computer, will make Sullyman a font that your computer can use. If you didn't finish all the letters, it will give you blank spaces when you type in the letters you did not complete. If you only did uppercase and you typed out the font, it would make everything uppercase. It would force it to uppercase. If you did upper and lowercase, it would type out as upper and lowercase. So this magic little button will download your font based on what I have completed. So you notice if I click the TTF and hit the space bar, it gives me the beginning of my letters as a preview. So if I complete this font and I take the TTF file and I put it in my font folder and I turn my computer off and turn it back on and I go into Word and choose a typeface from my character palette, Sullyman would appear. Boy, that's a terrible name. Sullyman would appear, and you would know, and you might notice by the class. So let me go into the class and go into the announcement section. And I'm going to go into the student fonts that I screenshot. Stoneworth, the font family are the character, Cowboys and Aliens, Digital Mess. There's all the different names of fonts that students have created, downloaded, and typed into a Word document so we could see what their typeface looked like. Yes, it can be as simple as, and you may notice from the samples, this is just thick lines. Like this was a lot easier than thick and diagonal, thick and gosh, little ribbons and snake shapes. And this one who has thick and diagonals, and there is a rhyme or reason to this. The Digital Mess is typed in font names. So you can actually see the students did a pretty good job with thick and thin and tapers and straight lines. Actually, I really like the O. Looks like a work of art. So, so you can see what other students have done using this tool to create some pretty interesting things. So maybe if you have a plan that you want to make your font look like a certain thing, you can name the font based on the thing you're trying to make it like Cowboys and Aliens. He was trying to make little snakes and everything with the little ribbon shaped lines. This one has a different name. It's not coming to me right now, but I don't think Sullyman is probably the best name because it's starting to have a life of something. I just don't exactly know what it is yet. So, okay, so it's 8:02. I've done a bit of time, an hour or so drawing. Hey, for an hour, I got A, B, C, D, A, B, D. So 7 working on 8 characters. And you did notice that I was able to select and copy and paste. So if certain letters followed the same layout of the other letters, you can copy and paste your brick pattern into the letter form and just add to the letter. So it does make life a little bit easier. Like the C, I'm going to guess the O would want to look like a version of the C. I could copy all the bricks for C and then just go from there. E and F obviously look very much the same. H will look like crossbars and stems similar to the E and F. So you'll notice as we go along, some of these things would get a lot easier by copying the letter and replacing it. I have to say, I'm proud of my A and B. My C is still a little funky. My D isn't bad. My lowercase a, B, and D, I kind of like. So I'm getting somewhere here in 45 minutes or an hour. So I probably would create quicker if I wasn't problem solving and talking during the lecture. But the lecture is about an hour and a half now, hour and 35 minutes. I want to try to keep it to that. So I give you time. Hopefully you allocated at least till 9 o'clock for you to either A, work on your design with type poster, or B, play around with FontStruct. If you blocked off the time, please take the time to play around a little bit, because as you can see from FontStruct, it could take a bit of time in order to create your upper and lowercase letters. And it does get addicting. And you'll notice I went back and forth between letters and started replacing bricks as I created more letters because I wanted the other letters to look more like the letter I was creating. So it can be a bit of OCD-ness to it as you're creating it, but I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the process. You understand type anatomy now. You understand X height, cap height, you know, you understand kerning. You understand that this thing's going to type out based on the spacing that I make the letters. And you want to be consistent with height and width of the letter. You want to be consistent with the size of things, because when you type them out, you want it to read like something that makes sense. Like you see the spacing here, the kerning on this type's really good. The student did a good job with width and height, right? That's pretty consistent. Cowboys and Aliens, pretty consistent with the spacing, the kerning, pretty good. Digital Mess reads really well. Thickness, the tapers, the curves. Student did a good job with that. So just keep that in mind as you're building it, so it doesn't look like a hot mess. It looks like a digital mess, no pun intended. All right, students, I'm going to stop the recording now. I'm going to keep the chat on so that if you want to pop in and say hi or anything like that, you can work on your projects. We're at 8:05. I'd like you to commit a little bit of time because you're on and you blocked off the time. You can kind of log off, play around a little bit, whatever you have to do. Let's try to have our fonts constructed. I think the type poster isn't going to be a lot of heartache for most of you. You should be able to put that together in an hour or so, kind of playing around with letters, numbers, and symbols. This one's going to take a bit of time. So don't leave yourself next Wednesday to build your font and type it out. Like, give yourself a little bit of time. So if I was doing kind of a target, I would say give yourself like Monday or Tuesday at the latest to have your alphabet constructed and download your font so you can put it on your computer. And that way it gives you a day or so to type out the font and play around with it. Type words, kind of make a little image out of it, kind of play around with it so I can see what you did. I'm not going to download all of your fonts to my computer, because if I did, my computer already has 1 million fonts and half of them aren't good. So not that your font wouldn't be good, because maybe it would be outstanding. I don't want to kind of cloud up my font folder, which I used to do on the teacher station here. I downloaded everyone's font they gave me and I played around with them. But now I have hundreds of fonts and I can't remember which ones the students created and which ones are just funny names of fonts that we downloaded from a font kit of actual, and I don't want to say yours isn't a professional font, but actual downloadable professional fonts. So I don't do that anymore. So we create the font and then you guys type it out on a piece of paper for me. So I know what you were thinking, kind of, here's my font and this is a description of my font. So I can tell you why I created the way I did. And then you just give me that file and then I can see your font and I can see, you know, your thoughts behind creating your font, but I don't have to download your font to my computer. So, okay, I'm going to stop the recording. And I'm going to keep the share on the chat window open just so you can pop in and say hi if you want to, and you can start working on your project. Let's kind of commit a little bit of time tonight so that you can work on one of these two things before you call it an evening. So let me just turn off my recording here. And then I'm going to turn off my share too, because I don't really need to share my desktop anymore for you guys. And I see you guys are all in here, so that's good. I don't know if it makes me, that's an interesting question. Does it make me, I think I could stop the recording.